later on in the show, Zach, I want to talk with Josh Lasting about just what's going on with all these strikes, right? You have WGA is currently on strike. This is going to start affecting our TV shows, and we're not going to, whatever the next season of your favorite show is might get delayed by a few months. You're going to start to feel it at the cinema, and it might get even more pronounced because I think if SAG-AFTRA doesn't hammer out a deal by the end of this month, they're going to go on strike. And now you have these two very important unions of creative professionals who are engaged in a work stoppage. That's going to have a huge impact on Hollywood. And what I've seen in response to that is a pretty interesting kind of thought experiment by a lot of writers and creative professionals out there, which is we're seeing a lot of striking on the film and television side, right? You have the actors looking to go on strike. You have the writers already on strike. Could we see something similar in the music industry, right? Recording artists and songwriters, these are certainly populations that we would find to be quite burdened by record labels and publishing companies. This whole podcast was started on that notion, right? That, hey, these labels are and these publishing companies sure do treat musicians badly. Could collective bargaining, could a strike be a way for these creative professionals to get better deals? And recently in Rolling Stone, Ethan Millman wrote about a movement among songwriters to consider striking as a way to get better pay. Could songwriters strike the same way that TV and film writers are striking? And we're going to talk a little bit about this, but the short answer is there are some significant legal impediments that would prevent songwriters from striking the same way that film and TV writers can strike. And, you as a labor lawyer, Zach, know a lot about this. But before we talk about the law, I want to sort of go back to the article here and underscore why there is a need for this, because they interviewed some songwriters who talked about how tough it is out there to be a songwriter and how just uncertain and how little of a foundation you have. This is some pretty wild quotes here, right? This is from a songwriter named Cadence Krysiuk, who wrote in the article, to sort of underscore like what her daily life is like as a songwriter. She said, quote, "Somebody reaches out and says, 'Hey, we've got a great opportunity for you. It's not paid. There's no budget. But if you break this artist, you're going to be good. So you go to this session for free. You have to pay for your parking, for your food. You leave the session $50 broker than before, and you hope the artist likes the song enough to put it out, which could take 6 months to a year, 2 years, 3 years. If it gets released, you don't see statements on that song for a good 9 to 12 months. And unless it's number one on Billboard, that check won't even cover your rent. And that's the peak of the song. As it gets older, slowly the money goes down since it's not streaming as much. And you're like, damn, I can't even afford to get lunch. So that's the lifespan of a songwriter. You could see how that's a tough life. You don't know where your next check's coming from. You're putting up a lot of upfront time and financial investment to every creative project, and you don't know. You have no way of knowing if it's going to bear fruit. You don't know if the big time artist is going to pick up your song. If they do, you don't know if that song is going to be a hit, and you don't know how long it's going to be a hit. And so if there was ever an industry that could use some of these labor reforms that the WGA is fighting for on the film and television side, it is songwriters. The article talks about a bunch of reforms that songwriters would like to see, Zach, like, for example, songwriters getting paid a session fee for their work when they, before a song is released, getting their food and travel expenses covered, even getting a percentage of ownership on the master recording when a master is created. Right now, generally, songwriters don't get those things. And so could it be something that they could strike for in the same way the WGA is currently striking to try to get better reforms on the film and television side? And the short answer is no. So in 1984, the National Labor Relations Board held that for labor law purposes, songwriters are not employees. They are independent contractors. And as a result, they're not allowed to avail themselves of the sort of protections that labor law provides to unions, because if a bunch of songwriters got together and told a publishing company, hey, we're going on strike unless you give us all a better deal, that sounds like, that's antitrust. That's a violation of, it's monopoly law. And so songwriters don't have the same ability to collectively bargain as writers on the film and TV side. And we're now wondering, as an industry, should that change? Should there be some right for whether it's songwriters or maybe even independent recording artists to be able to collectively bargain against a publishing company or against Spotify or Apple Music and try to get a better deal, try to get better rates? There's been some legislation that's been proposed. We had Ted Deutsch, Congressman Ted Deutsch, on the show about a year or two ago, who talked about creating the Protect Working Musicians Act, which would have created a collective bargaining right for recording artists against Spotify and streaming services to try to get better deals. But not much came of that. The bill didn't get a lot of co-sponsors. But I'd like to see this conversation happen again. And I think in this environment right now of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA looking to go on strike, maybe we should start having this conversation about legislation to give songwriters similar rights and to give indie creators similar rights in the music industry.
I mean, I tend to agree. The idea of getting a piece of the master is something that intrigues me.
That is interesting. I'll admit, I didn't think that wasn't something I thought of until I saw the article.
No, but the thing is while that sounds nice initially, that does not alleviate the problem that you don't know when the check is coming. You don't know if they're going to release it. Having a piece of a master is no good if they don't record it.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting thing, right? I bet record labels would freak out. That's where my mind goes. But I, on balance, I do agree. I think getting around some of those NLRB restrictions is going to be difficult, but that's why we have our guest today who can help explain this a little bit better than maybe I can. I think it's an interesting idea. I fully support it. I think currently, though, it might be a long shot. It's
got a certain, the devil's going to be in the details, right? You want to create legislation that is going to address some of these ills that songwriters are experiencing, like what Candace Krisiak has talked about in that quote I brought up, without necessarily completely destroying the music industry and the creative process and everything like that. But and so we got to get it right. But the conversation needs to start. And while I can't sit here, and while you can't sit here, and while Joshua Lastine probably can't sit here and tell you what the perfect solution is, we need to start talking about what that solution could be. Here's the thing that makes it really tricky for songwriters. All right, if we're talking about how they don't often get compensated well enough for the work that they do, let's look at just streaming. All right, let's strip out everything else. Let's just talk about Spotify. Not only does can songwriters not collectively bargain to get better royalties from Spotify, because of the way songwriter royalties are set up, songwriters are actually getting taxed almost by on their royalties. So, and they're getting less than they would have gotten had there just been a normal market transaction. So, there's two ways that songwriters get compensated by Spotify on the songwriting side. You have mechanical royalties, which are largely set up by federal statute, right? That songwriters can't negotiate higher than that. The law says how much they get paid, and it ain't very much. And you have performance royalties, which are set by ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, and the law has a floor or has a ceiling on what ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC can charge in terms of royalties under some consent decrees. So right now the government is sort of deflating the amount of money that songwriters could make from streaming services, which, even if so it's like doubly difficult. So not only can they not strike to get a better deal, but the government's actively helping them get a worse deal because of the ceilings that they're placing on the two kinds of royalties that they get. And, and we don't just see it in music side either. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if all of these Twitch streamers who we talk about on the show not getting a great deal by Twitch, what if they could collectively organize and go to Twitch and say, if you want to have all of us on your streaming service, you need to give us a better deal. You need to give us a higher percentage of the payouts. You need to allow us more control over our channels, things like that. That's the kind of stuff that unionization can give you, except the law would likely not let streamers unionize against Twitch.
That is, man, every time I feel optimistic, Ryan. Oh, wait, I'm usually the one who brings it down. No, I mean, and this is, we're gonna go 3 months in a row of me complaining about capitalism, but this is what happens. Right? Like, this is the situation that comes up because then the automatic response is, well, if you don't like Twitch, you should do it somewhere else. And then it's like, well, but Twitch is the place. It is the market, right? Just like if you don't like how much you're getting paid for YouTube videos, well, where else are you going to post them? It's an interesting thing. I would love to see some action. I would love to have that conversation start. I would love to hear some ideas. Because it depresses me to no end. Can I give a little extra bonus tip of the week for indie artists?
Always.
Collect your performance royalties, people. What Ryan is talking about is a big deal. When you play a show, for the love of all that's holy, submit your set list to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, whoever, and you get money for that. Like, people used to go, Zach, how come when you play acoustic shows, you only play your own material? Because I get paid for that. That's why I do it. Like, come on, people don't submit their own performance royalty statements. You got to do it. It's better money than you think. I guarantee you, it's more money than you'll make off Spotify.
Well, let's get more foundational than that, Zach. I bet there's a lot of songwriters out there who are saying, "What is ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC?" because they don't even have their PRO set up.
Oh, and it's so easy.
Yeah,
like just here. I'm on ASCAP. Whatever. Go to BMI. It's free. Their website walks you through how to do it. It's very easy. You set it up, you get your number so that whenever you're doing a split sheet, you put your ASCAP BMI, what is it, IPI number or something like that. You put that on there so everybody can track it, and then boom, it's seamless. They do a really good job, and you're going to be like, I don't want them taking a piece of my money. I get it, fine. But if they don't do that, you don't get any of your money. So do these things, submit your set lists. And also, if you cover my songs, please submit that you played my songs. I can
definitely submit your set list if you're covering a Zach Sloan song.
I mean, Elton John may be breaking records for best or highest grossing tour ever, but I'm not. So if you're covering me, please, and then I'll send you $5. That's really flattering.